Hello and welcome to State of the Economy. Today we decided to discuss India's growing defense economy, as it were. India is spending a lot of money and indulging. The government has of late been buying a lot of equipment to modernize its armaments, Army, Navy, Air Force altogether. And this government particularly has scaled up import of arms in a big way. We recently concluded a deal to buy 36 fighter jets from a French company called Dassault, Rafale jet aircrafts. And recently at the BRICS meeting, we are finalizing or close to finalizing similar deals with Russia. We are buying, we have a special defense partnership with the United States, under which a lot of equipment, whether for Navy or Air Force, all combined, Army, attack helicopters, etc., will be bought from the US. So there are a lot of action happening in this space, and it's also linked to India's geopolitical strategy for future. And to discuss all these issues, we have with us Ajay Shukla, who is a leading columnist with Business Standard, writes specifically on defense-related matters linked to, of course, Strategic Affairs. And he's been writing a lot on these issues. Therefore, we decided to get him to our studios and decode for us as to really what's going on in this space. Welcome to our show, Mr. Ajay Shukla. Now, you've been really sort of researching and writing on all these issues, India's defense preparedness, and the spate of recent deals that India is doing, whether it's with Russia, France, US. So tell us, where are we at this stage? Now, after some years of not really sort of modernizing our, there's a consensus that India was very slow in modernizing its military. Now there seems to be some action, but the action also is happening in a, there's a bit of arbitrariness which I detect from your own writings in the way things are happening. There's a method to the madness, of course. There's a long-term perspective plan which you've spoken about. Now, give us a broad idea as to what's going on.
Well, for many years, India was the world's biggest arms exporter. We had that dubious distinction. On the occasional year, Saudi Arabia would cross us when they would do a very big fighter deal or something. But for the most part, we were the world's biggest defense exporters. Importers. Now, that is a hugely problematic state to be in. Because, you know, it's not just the actual value of the deal that you sign that goes into a foreign economy. If you sign a deal for $1 billion, over the lifetime of that weapon system, whether it be a destroyer or an aircraft or a tank, you are buying spares, you are upgrading.
It's not like buying some consumer item where you buy this year, next year you move to something else. So you're tied in for the next 20 years.
You're investing in that person's economy, in that vendor's economy for the next 10 years after that. Now, over the previous years, particularly with the NDA government, they have sort of laid great emphasis on this Make in India program. And they believe that defense will be one of the pillars of the Make in India program. The problem is that it's not enough to make in India. It's a threefold system. It's make, create, and innovate. If you're just making it in India, you're basically manufacturing to a blueprint supplied by a foreign vendor, to his technology, building or assembling based on parts that you're importing from that particular economy. What we have to learn to do is to empower our own defense industry to create, to sort of design, develop, and then to further innovate.
Can I give an analogy here, just for the audience? What you just said is, it's a bit like how foreign car companies 20 years ago, they used to come to India 100% owned, and they would just bring spare parts and just assemble it here.
Yeah.
So you're saying that we are at that stage today.
We're at that stage, and we have to do what
from there we have to move to what we have done in the automobile
auto
sector.
parts sector.
Yeah,
that's absolute. That's a very good analogy.
Totally
the auto
indigenized,
parts
like
sector.
Maruti, almost 80% is made in 70% made in India.
Not just made in India, but the companies that are feeding into the Maruti supply chain are innovating.
Yeah.
They are designing. They
So
are
there's an
developing
ecosystem which gets created.
a whole ecosystem.
So that's
and
what
a whole technology
you're saying,
base.
that we need that in the defense sector, right?
We need to create that technology base and not just do screwdriver manufacturing.
Okay. So so tell me, the defense offset policy and all the changes in policy which this government has announced. Although I hear a lot of criticism that those policies are very slow in, first of all, getting formulated and taking off, because under the offset, we've not had any investments really so far, and under the very small marginal investment. So are things moving really in the Make in India defense?
Well, it's the fact of the matter is that Manohar Parrikar, who has been a defense minister with a certain sort of vision and drive, has encountered entrenched resistance within the system. The system is geared up in a logjam between a bunch of moribund defense public sector undertakings who are used to, just status quoism, manufacturing to blueprints, as we mentioned earlier, from outside, non-innovative. And you have a bureaucracy that is geared to perpetuating the system. So when you have an outsider like Manohar Parrikar come and try to change the system, he's going to encounter entrenched resistance. Okay. And from the day he joined, he was trying to reform this entire defense procurement policy and to create more innovation in the defense industry. Resistance. But he is finding a hard time doing it. And we hope that he will unlock the doors eventually. But so far, it's been hard going for him.
I spoke to some private sector people, and they did tell me that when they had this big, I think last year or early this year, in Goa, they had this defense manufacturing offset exhibition, Make in India kind of, where the defense minister was supposed to announce policy, and he did. In that, the crucial component of strategic tie-ups with global companies, that chapter was missing. Is that true?
That's not a strategic tie-up with global companies. That's strategic partnership, which means identifying Indian companies in each field. For example, one company for submarine building, one company for aircraft building, one company for armored vehicles.
Indian and foreign, or just Indian?
Indian companies. Which would then be the nodal point for that particular technology, with which foreign companies could then tie up, transfer technology, and then build in India. The aim was, of course, to create private sector hubs of excellence. So far, it has always been within the public sector, and the public sector has proved to be notoriously bad at absorbing technology. At taking it forward into newer, innovative pathways and so on. The belief now and the hope now is that the private sector will be able to do a better job of it.
So that policy document was supposed to have been released?
It's Chapter 6 of the Defense Procurement Policy, which has not been released so far.
Still not released?
No, still not released, because there's so much controversy around it.
What are the controversies?
The biggest controversy around it is that the bureaucrats are telling Parrikar that you saw what happened when you nominate somebody for, say, the 2G or the 3G spectrum, when you nominate a private company for, say, the coal block allocations. Saying if you nominate somebody, they're creating a scare. If you nominate somebody for, say, submarine building and another company...
You're open to accusations.
There will be accusations. We will be spending the rest of our retirement before the CBI and, all kinds of obstructionist viewpoints.
But Ajay, isn't that already happening? I mean... Rafale, for instance, we've done a deal for 36 aircrafts, and they have nominated a private company to do their domestic offsets, right? Isn't it?
At least some of them.
Some of them, yeah.
You see, the problem, this is a very fundamental problem in defense, is that the whole defense procurement mechanism and the bureaucracy is created with generalists, not with specialists in acquisitions and defense. So you have a bureaucrat who's come from, let's say, the Ministry of Animal Husbandry and is now involved in procuring a high-tech fighter. He doesn't know a lot about what he's doing. So he's extremely cautious. He's worried about being caught on the wrong foot with some justification. As long as you
What about
don't
advice
have
from the military, armed forces,
but
the civil military bureaucracy, are they working together?
eventually, it's the civil bureaucrat who has to sign on the file and to give that noting. And he is worried that if I say something wrong or I say something incorrect, I will be held accountable at a later stage. And he simply doesn't have the expertise. So unless you bring in specialists in procurement, you create that body of specialists, you will have this kind of tentativeness surrounding procurement, which tends to impede the whole process.
Okay, so you're essentially suggesting that a lot of refinement still needs to happen in this whole Make in India project involving private sector as partners in defense projects.
Refinement, and to create that refinement, you need to have the specialists who will understand the whole process. And to create those specialists, you need political will to change the whole IAS monopoly of the defense procurement mechanism. It's a whole chain of actions that need to be taken.
So are you hopeful that that things are moving in that direction? If they are, very slowly, or is the pace desirable?
There is nothing to show that things are moving in that direction. The government has not displayed the will to have a tri-service chief as yet. The government has not displayed the will to create specialists, a cadre of specialists, even though all of this has been recommended by a group of ministers in 2001, in the previous NDA regime. So there is the whole backing of recommendations and legislations that exists, but the political will, or let's be charitable and call it the political mind space, is still not evident.
I read some of your pieces, Ajay, in your blog, where you're also suggesting that that even the government's acquisition program at this moment you have the only option is to import to enhance your preparedness vis-a-vis the so-called China, Pak threat, border problems, etc. So we went in for to buy these Rafale 36 jets, right?
Fighters.
Now, in one piece, jet fighter. In one piece, you've compared how the earlier decision of the government to buy 126 Rafale jet fighters, as opposed to now 36.
The MMRCA contract.
Exactly. So you have said that the defense minister had very specifically stated when he moved from 126 to 36, he'd said that the terms would be better, and he'd said within 2 years those jets would be delivered. Now, on either of these two counts, things have not worked.
Things have not moved.
Worked the way they should have, right?
But it was a misconceived procurement in the first place.
In the first place,
you're buying a bunch of light fighters. You set out to buy a bunch of light fighters to replace the light MiG-21s, MiG-27s, and so on that were going out of service. And for some completely inexplicable reason, you get diverted down this path of high-tech, very expensive medium fighters like the Rafale. And the economics will never add up because you cannot buy enough planes within your budget to make up for those ones.
So you've given a calculation that in the earlier deal, 126, per aircraft worked out to something like 750 crores or thereabouts. But in the new so-called high-tech, fully loaded, one of your readers actually has written a letter saying it's a kind of Ferrari, you know, you're buying a
Ferrari to replace a Bullock cart.
So that's 1,500 crore. So there's a huge price gap.
There's a huge, but this is, I come back to my point earlier, when you're not focused, when you don't have specialists in procurement that are doing this, when you don't have a planning process that is being done at the tri-service level, then you will have these kind of random actions. I'm not suggesting that there was corruption in the Rafale deal.
No, you're not.
But I'm suggesting that there was just very bad planning.
There was honest arbitrariness, if you can call it that.
Honest arbitrariness. Let's go with that.
So now, you used a very interesting term, tri-service planning. Now, you've also talked about the government has a long-term perspective defense
LTIPP,
Yeah,
long-term
PP.
integrated perspective plan.
planning. So under that, they're supposed to do this, right? They're supposed to look at the integrated requirements of various defense segments and then plan the budget accordingly. But to me, it appears that the way they are buying, the arbitrariness, the honest arbitrariness, as you said, doesn't seem to suggest that there's integrated planning.
You see, we're all householders in a way. We have a certain budget with which we work. And then we realize or we arrive at a solution about what we can afford to buy for that budget. Now, India's defense budget can be easily predicted into the future. We just simply take a growth rate of 7 to 9%, or maybe 6 to 9%, and say that planning or projecting into the next 15 years, this is year by year what money we will have. And these are the weapon systems that are retiring from service. And this is what we will need to make up. So you know pretty well, or you can project pretty well about what you will need and what you can afford to buy. But we don't do it that way. For some reason, we just make out a laundry list of, desirable acquisitions. And the fact is that today that laundry list, the cost price of that list is about 3 times what we will actually be able to spend in defense. So this is not planning. This is just wishful thinking.
Like in the case of Rafale, again, I'm coming back to Rafale because somebody has suggested, in fact, one of the letters to your article, he looks like an expert, the one who's written, probably from the armed forces, where he argues that we've got 36 Rafale jet fighters, and they are like 2 squadrons of Ferrari, and then we have 18 squadrons of MiG-25, MiG-21s, which are in any case going to get phased out the next 20 years. So they are like ambassadors. So I found that letter very interesting.
The fact is that at the end of this Rafale
so what you're saying that we can't afford another 18 squadrons of Ferrari. If you do your defense planning properly.
Which is why, after buying these Rafales, the defense minister now finds himself in the position of having to go in for another light fighter buy for cheaper, lighter planes that would be able to replace those MiG-21. So it's almost like that Rafale acquisition failed to solve the problem that it set out to solve. So now we're going to have to go back to the start line and solve the problem afresh by getting a new bunch of light fighters, which is probably going to be either the Gripen or the F-16.
So we have to then look at various other companies from other countries, and is there also...
You've put your finger on a very important point. This other companies from other countries. If we were planning well, we would have by now gone in for an act like, let's say, the Buy American Act. Which mandates that you have to buy American companies' products. Russia, for example, the Russian military only buys Russian products. The French military would not be seen dead operating a product from another country. Now, we have the expertise in this country. We have the ability to mandate, at least into the future, that 6 years or 7 years from now, in this particular field, we will only buy Indian. That would provide an Indian company the assurance of future business in which he would be able to put in development expenditure and move towards developing that platform. But all of this, we believe, is not the job of the defense ministry. It's the job of the private sector. Now, who in the private sector is going to invest billions into R&D without any assurance of business from the government?
You were trying to explain to me a very critical component of this whole Make in India, which is that the government needs to build partnerships with, say, half a dozen private sector companies and give them an assurance that the partnership will, for specific technologies that they bring foreign partners into, the partnership will be, say, for 10, 15, 20 years, and there will be stability of partnership.
There will be a stability.
Yeah. And
you see, the point...
now, stability would also mean a kind of underlying assurance that the government will buy from them, right?
You see,
is that happening?
You made that analogy earlier in the program with the auto industry. That was relevant to the extent that, you create an ecosystem of technology that allows
all the ancillary units come up,
But where we diverge from the auto industry model is that in defense there is only one buyer.
And in the auto industry,
government.
it's the janta which is buying. In defense, the government.
Yeah.
So
the government is not just the sole buyer, it is also the market maker.
Market maker, yeah.
Over the years in India, the government has invested tens of lakhs of crores rupees in building up these public sector monoliths, 50 ordnance, 40 ordnance factories, 8 DPSUs and so on. But now when it comes to building up the private sector, it's encountering, aspects of conflict of interest and so on.
Yeah.
It believes that the private sector must come in and build up its own capabilities based on market values. The fact is nowhere in the world has any defense industry been created on its own steam. It is always a government, whether it was Krupp in Germany, where all the monoliths, Boeing, Lockheed Martin and so on in the US, they all began with wartime government orders.
Absolutely.
So the government is going to have to make choices. And it's going to have to make those choices transparently so that there are no allegations of favoritism and so on. It can be done. It's just that within our system, we have still not accepted that this is the way it is.
I think the
going to
mindset
be
has
done.
not changed yet.
The mindset has not changed. That's absolutely right.
And the other aspect, just taking forward what you just said, is that in the arms market globally, government-to-government deals happen, right?
Yeah.
Now, today India is saying that we must do government-to-government deal. That it also creates an assurance amongst people that no corruption is taking place. Now, if India becomes an exporting country, some other importing country may want a government-to-government deal. Again, the private sector will have to go through the government.
That's a
which has developed equipment, right? So they cannot directly export also. So in that sense, the role of the government becomes, as a market maker, becomes very important.
Extremely important. Every government, I mean, you look at the United States government, they are great proponents of free market economy. But when Lockheed Martin is offering the F-16 to India, believe me, everybody in the US embassy is behind that offer.
Yeah.
The US government is supporting it with offers like, the foreign military sales program where they will broker the deal between Lockheed Martin and India. So every government does support their industry. Our embassies all over the world, the defense advisors and defense attaches in those embassies will have to be geared up to promote Indian defense exports. We can't turn around at that stage and say, no, this is a private sector company and we're a government servant and we cannot get involved.
So basically,
in
you
this.
can't get away from a classical public-private partnership model in the defense sector, globally. That's what
is essential. It is essential for India to understand and accept this and for the Ministry of Defense to be prepared to put in A, the mind space, B, the decision risk, and C, the money to build up private defense industry.
So this would also mean that the government needs to shed its suspicion of the private sector on every issue.
Fundamental.
Because if the bureaucrat keeps suspecting every act of the private sector, then this partnership based on trust will never really evolve in that sense.
It's also ironical that the ones who are least deserving of trust are the ones upon whom trust is most bestowed, which is the public sector industry. If you examine their record over the years in terms of absorbing technology, in terms of innovation and so on, it's patchy at best.
Patchy.
There have been bright spots.
But here, Ajay, I'd like to, fundamentally I agree with you. Public sector can be trusted for not being, say, let's say, blatantly corrupt, but they can't be trusted for efficiency. But in some case, in a sense, the private sector, the kind of private sector companies which are coming forward to drive these partnerships, there are a lot of question marks over them also. I mean, I'm just trying to sort of balance the argument.
I agree with you completely.
Of course, there are some who are very trusted in terms of their own record, but there are some who just do not
highly indebted companies.
Yeah, evoke any confidence.
But that's for the government. That's where the government decision-making ability and discretion comes in.
Yeah.
It is crucial for government to weed out lesser players and to make sure that trusted, deep-pocketed players are left in the field at the larger systems integration level.
Yeah.
It is also essential that at the lower tier 1, tier 2 supplier levels, small and medium industries, which have everywhere in the world been the drivers of technology. It's never the big guys who create the technology. It's always small and medium industry.
The innovators, yeah.
The innovators. The government needs to have clear-cut programs and projects in order to bring up innovators, to support them financially. Many of these people are working on shoestring budgets, you know.
Yeah.
And if they invest into a certain technology and the government doesn't buy that technology, they're left holding the baby. You can't have that. If you want to promote innovation and design, you have to create an appetite for risk and a hedge against risk as well.
Absolutely. So let's hope that government gets this public-private partnership right the way other countries in the West have done.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ajay, for joining us today.
Thank you, Venu. Pleasure.
That's all we have in this edition of State of the Economy. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks for watching.